Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to another Deep Dive Explainer. Today, we are going on a truly cinematic adventure. We're going to decode a massive, intricate puzzle that literally spans from the ancient dusty deserts of the Old Testament all the way to the breathtaking, apocalyptic visions of Revelation. We're looking at a deeply fascinating theory presented by the channel Revealing Revelation. Now, according to their highly detailed analysis, the end times timeline isn't just some random chaotic assortment of future events. Instead, it's actually a highly structured 14-year prophetic map that is hidden right in plain sight. So, we're going to unroll this ancient scroll together today, and as you'll see, we've even brought along a brave little canine guide to help us sniff out all the hidden clues along the way. Get ready, because we are mapping out the Synoptic Gospels to solve a mystery that has puzzled scholars for centuries, basically treating these ancient scriptures like the ultimate treasure map.
Here is the map for our journey today. First, we'll look at the 14-year mystery. Then, the beast's 42 months. From there, the 42 wilderness stations, and finally, Joshua and the Promised Land.
Section 1. The 14-year mystery, the synoptic sequence.
So, according to the Revealing Revelation channel, the end times timeline isn't just strictly confined to the book of Revelation. Actually, the sequence is perfectly hidden across the Synoptic Gospels. The theory proposes that this epic 14-year end times narrative is sequentially split into very distinct consecutive phases. Think of it like a three-part journey. It begins with Luke's discourse, which they align with the initial pre-tribulation period. Then, the timeline winds like a glowing path into Mark's Gospel, representing the first 7 years, which they identify as the years of the seals. Finally, the whole journey concludes in Matthew's Gospel, covering the final 7 years, known as the years of the trumpets. It is a massive, perfectly interlocking puzzle. For our adventure today, our loyal little canine guide has already picked up a scent, leading us directly into the Gospel of Mark. This specific 7-year stretch is exactly where the absolute core of our mystery unfolds, and it requires us to look really closely at how this era actually opens.
The source anchors the very beginning of Mark's discourse with a specific and frankly devastating historical marker. Mark 13:8 speaks of nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Now, the channel theorizes that this profound global unrest represents the literal opening of the 14-year period. Specifically, they align it with the arrival of the red horse rider described over in Revelation. According to this perspective, a great sword is given to the earth, and the world plunges into roughly 2 years of severe, unprecedented global conflict. We are essentially talking about a devastating world war. This chaotic, violent period sets an incredibly dark stage. It functions as a turbulent prelude before a massive, dramatic turning point comes along and completely shifts the narrative, forcing a sudden and terrifying change of plans for believers worldwide.
Section 2. The beast's 42 months, fleeing into the wilderness.
After those initial 2 years of global turmoil in Mark's timeline, we hit a massive event, the Abomination of Desolation. You can think of this event as the ultimate, undeniable warning siren for believers. When this specific desecration happens, the instruction in the text is incredibly clear. Drop absolutely everything and immediately flee into the wilderness. The source emphasizes that this exact pivotal moment in Mark 13 perfectly mirrors the prophetic events we see in Revelation 13. Now, why does this matter so much? Because this is the precise, calculated moment when the entity known as the beast, alongside the false prophet, officially seizes global power. Notice how carefully the text is structured here. False Christs and false prophets weren't even mentioned in the first 2 years of Mark's sequence. They only emerge from the shadows right now, at the exact moment of this grand, terrifying escape.
The theory emphasizes a deeply important detail right here. This terrifying reign of the beast, it's not indefinite. It is definitely not an eternal dictatorship. It is given a very specific, undeniable, and strictly enforced time limit of exactly 42 months. The channel points out that prior to this catastrophic moment, the beast was already part of the global system, sure, but critically, it lacked total, unchecked power. But right at the Abomination of Desolation, the absolute clock starts ticking. 42 months of supreme authority are granted from above, and this directly and mathematically coincides with the urgent time frame where believers must flee into the harsh wilderness just to hide and survive.
And this brings us to a massive, tantalizing question posed by the source. It's a true detective's dilemma that our furry companion is actively trying to sniff out right now. If believers are forced to flee into the wilderness for exactly 42 months, when does that countdown actually start? Think about it. Does this 42-month clock begin ticking in the blazing heat of the summer, in the dead, freezing cold of winter, the blooming spring, The harvest fall? Well, to understand a prophecy about the distant future, the channel suggests we actually have to turn around and look backwards. We literally have to dig up an ancient, dusty map buried deep within the Old Testament to find the hidden key.
Section 3, 42 Wilderness Stations, the Old Testament Mirror.
To solve the mystery of Revelation's timeline, the source unearths a spectacular prophetic mirror hidden deep within the Book of Numbers. It takes us all the way back to the epic story of Moses and the Israelites. Remember, they were violently enslaved in Egypt and had to make a desperate escape from Pharaoh. Well, the channel views Pharaoh as a profound historical type, basically a deliberate divine foreshadowing of the end times beast. Now look really closely at the exact timing of their escape recorded in Numbers 33. The Israelites fled Egypt immediately after the Lord's Passover. They fled in the first month, which is the spring season. But the miraculous parallel doesn't stop with just the time of year. The actual physical journey they took out of Egypt holds the ultimate mathematical key to our entire 14-year puzzle.
Here is where the theory truly locks into place, creating just a stunning visual map. The channel overlays the future escape from the beast directly onto the historical escape from Pharaoh. It's like a perfect mirror image. In Revelation and Mark 13, believers flee into the wilderness for exactly 42 months. In the Book of Numbers, when the ancient Israelites fled into the literal wilderness, their long journey was officially and meticulously recorded as stopping at exactly 42 distinct geographical locations. These are known as the 42 Wilderness Stations. The source argues with deep conviction that this is absolutely no coincidence. The 42 historical stations in the desert are a direct, intentional, prophetic equivalent to the 42 future months of the beast's reign.
Let's walk through this calculation together, because the symmetry here is beautifully intricate. If the 42 months of fleeing the beast is prophetically identical to the 42 stations of fleeing Pharaoh, then they must share the exact same starting season, right? The Israelites fled their oppressor at Passover right in the vibrant spring. Therefore, the channel asserts the 42 months of the beast's dark power must also definitively begin in the spring. Now just think about the simple math of the calendar. If you start a 42-month countdown, which is exactly 3.5 years, in the spring, where do you end up? You end up perfectly, flawlessly in the fall. The timeline resolves itself with incredible elegance, intentionally setting the stage for the most spectacular, world-altering event in the prophetic calendar to occur right in the autumn season. Section 4, Joshua and Promised Land, the arrival of the Messiah. Okay, so we've tracked the timeline from the spring Passover all the way through the arduous 42 months of the wilderness. Now we have to decode what actually happens when that allotted time finally runs out. Going back to our Old Testament map, what happened historically at the very end of those 42 desert stations? Well, the book of Deuteronomy ends with a pretty bittersweet moment, the death of Moses. He isn't permitted to take the people into the Promised Land. Instead, a massive transfer of leadership occurs. God formally appoints Joshua to lead the Israelites across the Jordan River into victory. According to the channel, this passing of the torch isn't just some ancient historical fact. It is the ultimate prophetic typology pointing directly to the end of the sixth seal in the book of Revelation.
There is a fascinating linguistic and prophetic connection right here that ties the whole narrative together perfectly. The channel points out that back in Numbers 13, Moses actually changed the name of his protege Hosea to Yeshua. In English, we know that name as Joshua. Now, Joshua literally translates to Jehovah is salvation or God is salvation. In the realm of biblical prophecy, Joshua is widely recognized as a direct, undeniable picture of Jesus Christ, acting as the conquering Messiah Ben Ephraim. The parallel is just striking. Just as Joshua historically arrived at the very end of the 42 stations to defeat their enemies and lead the exhausted people into the Promised Land, the true Messiah arrives at the very end of the 42 months to completely defeat the beast and rescue the weary believers.
Watch how beautifully this grand arrival locks into the ancient calendar we decoded earlier. We already established the 42 months ended precisely in the fall, right? Well, in Mark 13, at the climactic end of the sixth seal, the Lord arrives in the clouds with great glory. The scripture famously calls this highly anticipated arrival the day and hour no one knows. The channel provides a brilliant piece of historical context here, explaining that this famous phrase wasn't just a metaphor for randomness. Not at all. It is a direct, ancient Hebrew idiom specifically referring to the fall Feast of Trumpets. This is a unique two-day feast based entirely on the visual sighting of the new crescent moon, making it literally a day and hour no one could predict in advance with absolute certainty. The prophetic timing and the ancient traditions align absolutely perfectly. Let's look at the ultimate resolution of our epic adventure here. Step 1. The 42 grueling months of the beast's power permanently exhaust their limit right in the fall season. Step 2. Perfectly fulfilling the historical typology of Joshua, the Messiah arrives in the clouds at the Feast of Trumpets, marking the dramatic end of the sixth seal. And Step 3. Just as Joshua victoriously led the ancient Israelites into the literal physical promised land, the Lord rescues the vast, mid-tribulation multitude who fled into the wilderness. He safely guides them away from all the chaos and leads them directly into the ultimate, eternal promised land, paradise.
With the believers safely guided through the wilderness and into paradise, this monumental rescue operation neatly ties up the Mark portion of our 14-year mystery. The beast and the 10 horns are left behind to face the impending wrath of the Lamb. The source notes that following this rescue, the remaining natural Israelites then return to the land of Israel. With the harrowing 7 years of seals fully completed, the cosmic stage is now entirely cleared. The massive prophetic timeline advances seamlessly, turning the page into the final sequence of the journey, Matthew's intense, climactic 7 years of trumpets.
It is truly fascinating to impartially map out the intricate, interlocking puzzle that Revealing Revelation has constructed for us today. By actively taking the apocalyptic timeline out of a strictly future context and laying it directly over the historical, geographical journey of the ancient Exodus, the channel builds a deeply compelling visual and mathematical case for this 14-year structure. It leaves us with a profound, awe-inspiring thought to ponder today. If the exact duration, the specific season, and the ultimate resolution of the apocalypse are perfectly hidden as a typological map in the ancient sands of Exodus, what other incredible ancient maps are just sitting there in the text waiting to be decoded? Keep exploring, keep learning, and thank you for joining us on this explainer.